Good afternoon, pilot teachers, and good afternoon, students. Okay, thank you. Sit down. Okay, our lesson still our lesson still looks at contours, which is another important feature in map reading. And from what we have covered already so far, we said that contours are supposed to be lines on maps which joins up places of the same height above sea level. Three things that contours are supposed to actually show us when we look at them. One, they're supposed to indicate height above sea level, and for height, we were able to easily interpret by looking at the values on the contour lines given on topographic maps. Contours are also supposed to show us what we call relief, and relief is mainly to do with the difference in height of the land. And as well as that, contours are supposed to show us the difference in landform, and that is mainly the difference between the slope and the shape of the land. Okay, for the work on slope, we did work on looking at how we can identify the contour patterns to tell us what type of slope we can expect to find in an area. And key words or terms like the closer together the contour lines, the steeper the slope, the further apart the contour lines, the gentler the slope. If the contour lines are of the same distance apart, then we say the slope is uniform. Similarly, for concave and for convex, contour lines closer together at the top, wider at the bottom, and closer together at the bottom, contour lines wider at the top. Okay, those key terms we have already looked at to tell us about the different types of slope we can find in an area. We also moved on with our lesson yesterday by looking at the shape of the land using contour patterns. Looking at contour patterns, we can also identify what we call models or relief models in reality. So a contour pattern on a topographic map can also show us the type of feature that can be found in reality. Looking at some of those models then and the patterns, we can now make reference to what we did look at yesterday, and that was on a contour pattern which is nice, round, and concentric, will represent a feature in reality of that of a hill or a mountain. And note that the pattern that is shown by the contour is that of a nice secular pattern, but noting that the values would start from a lower number at the bottom of the contour line, and the values get bigger or it gets higher as we get to the center. In other words, this is telling us that we are increasing in height as we are going to the center of this feature. And in reality, this is what the feature would look like having this type of contour pattern. So hills and mountains are represented with secular contour patterns. We also looked at another of those features, and that is that of an escapement. And for an escapement, we note the contour patterns would be closer together on one side of the feature, and they go further apart from on the other side of the feature. And when we see a secular contour pattern like this, but then closer together, the contours on one side and then the contour lines are further apart, then we can say the feature could be that of an escapement. And in an escapement, you have a steep side to the feature and a gentle side to that particular feature. And the gentle side is shown with the contours widely spaced, and the steep side is actually shown with the contours close together. Another of those features that we looked at, and I stressed on, was that of a ridge. And you can see that a ridge is usually found between two valleys, and it can be recognized on a contour map by a V-shaped contour pattern. But note that the V points downhill. Okay, so the V here, forming this particular feature, points downhill. And how do we know it is downhill? We simply look at the value of the contour patterns. It's downhill because we start off with 100, and as we go up to the center of the feature, the values or the number increases. But the V's here, they are pointing downhill. And when we see a contour pattern of such with V's pointing downhill, then we say the feature is that of a ridge. We also looked at the contour pattern of a valley. Valleys are an important feature of the landscape. They're usually associated with a stream or river, but they can also be recognized by a V-shaped contour pattern. The difference then between a ridge and a valley is that the V-shaped patterns of the valley will usually be pointing uphill. So the V points uphill, whereas in the ridge, the V points downhill. And again, you can tell whether you're going uphill or downhill by looking at the values of the contours. Another of the feature is that of a depression. And usually a depression in the Earth's surface, like a crater or volcano, is shown on a contour map by a series of enclosed contours, but the heights become lower towards the center. And to avoid being confused with hills, depression contours have short bars on them pointing in towards the center. So if you look at the contour pattern itself, if the bars are actually not shown, then one could say that this is a contour pattern of a hill or mountain. But having those bars pointing towards the center tells us that there is a depression or a hollow in the top of that feature. So in the case of this example, it could be a volcano with a crater. So the crater then, it's a depression, so therefore it would be represented with a bar on those contours. A question was asked yesterday, and I also answered that if you know the contour interval of this particular map, the ones that usually have depressions, you will still be able to work by how much we are going down, knowing the interval of the map, because the interval of contour maps must always be constant. So if you are going to go up by, say, 50 meters, by the time you reach the bars here representing the depression, you will go down by 50 meters, and etc. Okay, and that's how we also read the information on heights of a depression which is given, especially at the top of a hill or mountain. Those were some of the common landforms and the contour patterns associated with those common landforms. We are going to go ahead now to looking at more of the different contour patterns and some of the other landforms associated with it. From our monitor here, we have the landform of the valley again. An explanation of the contour pattern we have looked at already. So looking at the valley very quickly, contours in a U or V shape that points to the higher land. So we have the higher land here, and the V is actually pointing towards the highland. That would be a contour pattern of a valley. You can make reference to what you have noted or copied into your exercise book also. If we're looking at the side view of this particular landform here, that is that of a valley, a sketch would show us a hollow section there, the bottom part here, and an explanation of that landform or the sketch tells us that it is an indent in the side of a hill or a dip between two spurs. A valley is simply an indent in the side of a hill or a dip between two spurs. And a sketch of that and a side view of this particular pattern will look something like what is being constructed on our monitor or what you have constructed in your exercise book. Any questions on the valley contour pattern, the explanation, and the side view? No questions? Okay, let's move on. The second landform, again, it is a river valley, a valley with a river. We still have the contours, the V's which are pointing towards the higher value or uphill. But this time you have a river actually flowing in between that particular feature, which is the valley. From the explanation, it tells us that rivers flow between the arms of a valley, and note again the V or the U points upstream, and you can see that clearly. They point upstream simply because we can tell the value is actually getting higher as we are going to the top of that feature. And we note also from common sense that rivers or streams would usually start from higher areas and flow down towards the lower areas. Okay, a side view of this particular landform here, the valley with a river. This is what it would look like from the side view. The river flowing here between the two spurs, that is. And a sketch of the landform would look something like this, as shown from the monitor and also what you have made note of in your exercise book. I think that's straightforward. We'll move on to the next landform. Okay, the next landform is that of a gorge. When we look at a gorge, the contour pattern that will represent or show a gorge would be one that has the contour lines close together on one side of the feature, similarly on the other side, and there is a gap in between those two sets of contour patterns. If you look at the height of that particular example given, you will find 200, 250. I'll repeat again. You will find 200, 150, 150. And then you have a big gap. You come across, you start off with 50, 100, 150, and 200. So when you try to work out what this feature would look like in reality, you can go to the side view of that feature, and this is what it would look like. You have a drop to the bottom of the feature, and then a sharp increase again on the side of the feature. So you have the two sides and the bottom of the feature, of which a river or a stream may actually flow through there. But the contour pattern would be one as shown on our monitor, or what you would have constructed. It tells us there the explanation of the contour pattern for a gorge. Contours are close together on the valley sides, these sides here, and you will find very few contours on the valley floor. So this part here is the valley floor, and where the contour lines are, they are showing us the valley sides. A side view of the landform, the valley side, and the valley floor at the bottom here, and a sketch of that particular landform, again the valley side and the valley floor at the bottom. A contour pattern of such would give us the landform called a gorge. Any questions with regard to that landform? No? Okay, we'll move on. The next landform is that of a cliff. The contour pattern of a cliff. If you can see the bars being drawn there, this tells us that there is a depression. In other words, a big or a quick drop down at the edge of that feature to give us the cliff. And look at the contour pattern. They've been drawn to this point here, of which that point is represented with a bar. And that bar, as we've noted already from what we've looked at on depression, will show us a drop at the edge of this feature. Okay, here, the explanation of the contour pattern for the cliff. Contours are actually on top of each other, or hatches are actually used to show the pattern of a cliff. If you look at the side view of the landform, the drop here, as you come to the edge here, there is a vertical drop, and that is represented with the bars as shown on the pattern. It says here, explanation of the landform, vertical or near vertical gradient, especially for this section here of the feature. And a sketch of a cliff would look like what is shown here on the monitor. Okay, that is that for the landform of a cliff. Let's move on to the landform, a ridge. A contour pattern showing us the landform of a ridge would look like this. Contours are elongated, which means more or less like in an oval shape, that is not nice and round. If it is nice and round, it would be that of a hill. But because it is elongated, it means it would represent the feature of a ridge. The side view of this particular contour pattern or landform would be maybe a feature looking like what is shown here on the monitor, and a sketch of that feature, you would usually have a long, narrow hill. And because of the fact that the contours are elongated, you will not find a round hill, but rather a longer, narrow hill in comparison to a normal hill or mountain. Okay, that is that for the ridge, which is another of those landforms that you can identify from looking at the contour patterns. The round hill, I think this is straightforward. This is what we have already looked at. Contours are fairly equally spaced in a circle or an oval shape. The side view, you would have a feature looking like this, and then if you had a sketch, one looking like that. Circular contour to represent a round hill. I think this is straightforward. We've looked at that already, so we move on. The next one of an escarpment, again, I've explained this earlier on. You have contours which are close together on one side, but they are far apart on the other side. The side view of an escarpment would look like this, whereby you have a scap, which is the steep side, and the dip, which is the gentle side or the gentle gradient. So a scap would represent the steep side of an escarpment where the contour patterns are close together, and a dip would represent the gentle side of that particular feature where the contour lines are further away from each other. The side view of the landform here and the sketch of that landform as shown here. Any questions on escarpment? I think that's straightforward. Okay, the other landform now that we need to also know about when we're looking at our contours would be that of what we call twin peak or twin peaks with a saddle. The twin peak is represented by these two contour lines here inside a set of contour lines given. These two contour lines here would represent peaks if their value is greater than the value of the other contours below it. Contours, usually for the explanation of the twin peaks with saddle, contours form two circles with a space in between them, this space here in between. This space then is what is called a saddle. The peaks are shown with those two contours, and in between those two peaks is a saddle. So to look at the side view of this particular landform here, the twin peaks with saddle, the twin peaks would be one here and the other peak there, and the dip in between then is the saddle. So you have the explanation of the side view, two areas of high land, which are the peaks, and the low land area in between is the saddle. A sketch of the landform as shown here on the monitor. Okay, so here you have the twin peak with the saddle. See the contour pattern and see how it is represented on the side view with the sketch also given. Any questions on that? No questions? Okay, we look at, again, the contour pattern of a ridge or a spur. Note that for the contour pattern of a ridge or a spur, we've already looked at how we can identify the difference between a ridge and a valley. And for the ridge, we say that the V's are pointing to the low values or towards the lower area. The contours are in a U or V shape that points away from the highland. So the V's are pointing towards the smaller value. The side view of a ridge or a spur would look like that. Okay, you can check on your handout or worksheet for the explanation of the ridge or a spur, and it tells us that it is supposed to be an area of highland, that's the second last diagram I'm looking at here, between two valleys or a finger of land jutting out of a hill. And that is the explanation that should go with the side view and the sketch. Okay, finally, the last of those contour patterns we need to get ourselves familiar with is that of the landform which is known as a spare with a null. Okay, the spare with a null, note, you have the spare itself, and then you also have a contour, a secular contour, which is drawn at towards the edge of that particular feature. So you will note a secular contour drawn with a spare or a ridge. And when you see a feature of such, then you can say the landform is a spare with a null. It's the explanation to this pattern, secular shaped contour, which is actually found on a spare. The side view of the landform you would see, and a null here, which is formed as a result of what we find here from the pattern. You find a small hill which is found on top of or where the spare is, and the side view of that, the sketch of that feature would look something like what is shown on the monitor. Okay, you look at the contour pattern again. You have the spare or the ridge itself, and then you have a secular contour which is found on the spare. On the side view, this is what that feature would look like. And this particular secular contour represents a null. And the sketch of it as shown here. Okay, so basically what we have looked at some of the common landforms and the different contour patterns which are associated with those different landforms. If we can identify those different contour patterns from topographic maps, then we can work out what type of landform we can expect to find in reality in the area given. You can now make reference to the handout that was distributed or the information you have copied into your exercise book, and we'll do some activities to see if we can identify from topographic maps some of those features that we have just looked at and those features which I have just explained. Okay, make reference to the map of Sogeri. The area that you are going to actually concentrate mainly on the map of Sogeri is the reference map square 4151 and 4051. So the map square 4151 and the map square 4051. Okay, within that map square 4151, see if you can identify some of the landforms from the contour patterns that are shown there. And you do the same for the map reference 40 or the map square 4051. See if you can identify some of the landforms by looking at the contour patterns that are found within those two areas of reference. It's the map of Sogeri we are making reference to for locating those different landform features. First of all, map square 4151. Where is it? Where is that area? 4151. Okay, so that means within that grid. This grid here. Within this grid, using what we have already looked at on the contour patterns and the landforms, can you identify some landforms within this grid here? Just within that square. Okay. Check quickly, look at the patterns, make reference to your notes, and then you see if you can name some landforms that are found there in reality. Four zero. This one here. 4051. Okay. Yeah, good. You can see a valley. Where in that particular grid tells you there is a valley? Point exactly to. Oh, it's in the square here. 4051. Valley is okay. Okay, you tell me where can you see a valley? What are you looking for? The V, which is pointing uphill. So where the river is flowing, automatically you can say this is a valley. See? So that's the easy one. Good. What else can you find in there? Are all the contours pointing uphill? Okay, so those that are pointing downhill, what would they be referred to as? No? The valley with river is just the same as the valleys here. They are the same, only that this one here has a river running through, this one here doesn't have any river running through. How about the contours which are pointing away from the highland? Like here? These ones are pointing uphill, right? And then these ones are pointing downhill. So what would these ones be known as? Yeah, definitely. So you see there's two landforms are within this 4051 that you can identify. Make note. Okay, now you go to 4151. Anyone having any problems with that activity? Let me know. I'll come around and help you. No, you have to be careful. You see this one here? It comes with secular ruasa. So what this one is telling you is that you have a mountain, and then at the top of a mountain there is a depression. You remember? Okay, now you go to this one here. What is this one telling you? Contours on top of each other, or hatches are used. The bars here to represent the vertical depression or straight down. So make a choice between this or that for this point here. Which one do you think it will be showing? This or that? It would be showing a cliff here, definitely, yeah, because there is no secular contour and then the bars in there, which more or less showing something like that. Can you see that? You see all the contours and then that's at the edge. So yeah, that's one feature that you will find within there. Any other features? You look within the square, any other features that you can locate beside that? If you cannot locate other features, then you move on to the next one. If you can find some more features, then make note of it, but know exactly what you're looking for. 40 ridge, good, very good. And this one here, 4151, the spare with null, valley with rivers. Okay, 41, let's check. That's the 4151, huh? 41. 4150, this point here. 4150, which is? 4151. Okay, 4151, so it's this square here. So within the square here, 4151, what can you see in here? You said spare with an all.
This the one with the smallest step.
No, you know why I'm saying no? Because there are also other contours which go around it, and this does not sit at the edge here. You get it? Okay. But you could check, you see? One peak here, another peak there. This feature in the middle. The feature in the middle between those two peaks.
Twin peaks.
Yes, that would be another of those. Are you able to find the other one? You still having problems? Huh? An escapement? Okay, you check. Which one did you say is an escapement?
In the center, the other side was far apart, the other side was close together.
Okay. You're looking at only from here to here, stop, because as you go away from here, oh no, it's all right, you're coming to this point. This feature here is a bit too long to represent that feature. It's a bit too, see, it's a bit too long to represent such feature, because an escapement should be the secular contour closer together on one side, further apart. But this one is a bit too long, it goes all the way there. So it cannot show an escapement, unless it's a secular hill, but closer on one side, further apart on the other side. So double check. Could be other features that you could find in there.
When there's a cliff right on the line, how will we read that for block 41, 40 and 50?
Okay, you have 40 and 51. 4051, which is here. 4051, which is here.
Yeah.
So you can include that either here or on the other side. It will still be okay. Okay, we'll check for those two areas and make corrections to them. First of all, 4151. Okay, if we look at 4151, some of the features that you should be able to actually pick out from the contour pattern would be one, that of a cliff. Can you all double check? Okay, a cliff there, which is shown with the bars as represented on the contour patterns. So around this area there, you would have a cliff. If you had that, well done. There's also a hill, which is actually shown within that 4151. It's this section here. Can you see the secular contour pattern? Okay, that is representing a hill in that area. Any other features I might have missed out that you located for 4151 beside the cliff and the hill? Okay, twin peak with saddle. We all check. Twin peak with saddle? Yes, I agree. You see this point here? The twin peak, and in between there, the saddle. Yes, the twin peak with saddle. You could also locate within that particular grid reference 4151. Any other feature I might have left out in that particular grid reference or area? Gideon? Where's the microphone?
Valleys with river.
Okay, the valleys with river. Let's check. Valleys with river. We happy with the valleys with river? Yes, because you can see from the key, the blue lines represent the rivers, and those rivers are actually running through the valleys, and the V shape is actually pointing up or down towards the lower value or up towards the higher value. Up towards the higher value, yes. So if you look at one of those blue lines that is found within the grid square 4151 to show the river, and you check where the rivers are actually flowing, would be between where the valleys are pointing uphill or the V's are pointing towards the higher value. Okay, so those 4 features. Let's move on to the next contour. Sorry, not the next contour, but the next grid reference or the map reference, and that is of 4051. Okay, 4051, we check. A valley can be found in this particular grid square. And a valley, if you look carefully, showing us the V's which are pointing uphill. The second thing that can also be found in this area is the valley with rivers, yes, because the blue lines indicate the rivers flowing. Beside that, you can also note there will be a ridge, which is found also within this particular grid square 4051, as shown here. Okay, this time the V's are pointing towards the lower values or downhill. The V's or the U's pointing downhill or towards the lower value. I think those would be the 2 main features you would find in that grid square 4051. Okay? This time, let's move over to the map of Port Moresby. And for the map of Port Moresby, I'm going to ask you then to do this for your homework. I'd like you to concentrate mainly on the grid lines, eastings first of all, 0, 09, 09 to 13. So you just concentrate mainly on the grid lines 09, 10, 11, 12 to 13. That's for the eastings. And the northings, you refer to the grid lines 55, 56, 57, and 58. So that area within these grid lines as given, that's what I'd like you to concentrate on. So you can get your pencil and rule lightly between 09 to 13 and 55 to 58 and draw in a square there that you are going to concentrate within that area. And what I'd like you to do for your homework is to see if you can list as many features that you can find within this area and see if you can note what those features are by identifying the contour patterns that are being represented within this area. Okay, so again for your homework, within the area 0913 to 5558, I'd like you to see if you can make a list of the different landform features that are found there using the contour patterns. And that is the map of Port Moresby you have to make reference to. Okay, that also brings us to the end of our lesson. The homework is given. If you can now stand up, please. Okay, to the pilot teacher, our keyword for today is landform. If you can add that to your checklist.